Hello everyone, I'm Saurabh and I welcome you back to the digital board series by Orchids Biosciences. This is the second video of the first chapter, that is life processes. If you haven't seen the first video yet, I have provided its link in the description below, so please do check it. Now coming to this video, in this video we will be discussing the following topics. We will start with heterotrophic nutrition and its types. They are saprophytic, parasitic and holozoic nutrition. Then under holozoic nutrition, we will be discussing the nutrition in single-celled and multi-celled organisms. Then under single-celled organisms, we will see the nutrition in amoeba and paramecium. And finally, under multi-celled organisms, we will see the nutrition in human beings in detail. Now, let's get started with heterotrophic nutrition. As discussed earlier, in heterotrophic mode of nutrition, the organism cannot prepare or synthesize their own food. They completely depend on other organisms for their nutrition. The heterotrophic mode of nutrition can be further divided into three categories. First one is saprophytic nutrition, second one is parasitic, and the third one is holozoic nutrition. In saprophytic mode of nutrition, the organism obtains the nutrients by absorbing directly from some dead and decaying organism. We can write example here as fungus, like mushrooms, which grow on the bark of dead trees. In parasitic mode of nutrition, the organism depend on living organisms for their nutrition. For example, leeches. So I can say parasitic mode of nutrition is a type of nutrition in which the organism live inside or on the body of other living organism and derive their nutrition or food from them. The last one, that is holozoic form of nutrition. In this, the organism takes some complex substances and which is later converted into simpler forms using certain enzymes. And the example can be human beings. So we take in some complex food which is then converted in our body into some simpler forms and then taken up by our body. Now coming to holozoic mode of nutrition. In holozoic mode of nutrition, let us start with nutrition in single-celled organisms. In single-celled organism, their structure itself is very simple and they do not have any complex organs to take in the nutrients or utilize those nutrients for energy. They have very simple structures and very simple organs to do the functions. Let us first take nutrition in amoeba. We know that amoeba is a single-celled organism with not a proper or definite shape. It has a free-flowing cytoplasm and a prominent nucleus. So first we'll draw an amoeba with its cytoplasm and a prominent nucleus. So this is its nucleus. This one is cytoplasm. So this is the structure of amoeba. Now, if any food particle, let this be the food particle. If any food particles come around amoeba, then what happens? Let us see. When any food particles come around amoeba, they show some finger-like projections like this. This is nothing but they spread their cytoplasm around the food particle, and this is called as pseudopodia. Be silent here. Here pseudo means false, and the second one, that is podia, means, or podium means feet, which means they are their false feet. These are not their original feet. They do not have any hand or feet, anything like that. These are just the extension or some the cytoplasm which is spread around the food particle to capture it. So now the pseudopodia will be completely capturing this food particle and this forms a food vacuole. So in the next step, what happens is the food is taken in. This is the site in, now it is inside the cytoplasm which has a nucleus. In the next step, what will happen is this food particle will be broken down into simpler form. If we look into amoeba, what happens is the food particle which has now entered the cytoplasm will be broken down from complex form into some simple forms, and this process is known as digestion. So I can say digestion is the process in which complex food, this is the complex food which is broken down into simpler ones and then taken up by the body. Now the food is broken into simpler ones which can be now absorbed by the body. So this nutrients from the food is now transported to the entire cytoplasm and the amoeba gets its nutrition. And after the food is absorbed, there will be various waste product will be generated, and these waste products have to be removed out from the body. So again it forms some finger like projections, pseudopodia, to expel the waste out of the body. So through this pseudopodia only again the waste will be also expelled out from the body. There will be nucleus, cytoplasm. So this is how nutrition happens in amoeba. If you look into the nutrition of paramecium looks something like this. It's again a single cell organism, but it has a definite site through which the food enters, and this is called as the mouth. If the food comes near the paramecium, this food particle will be then transferred to the mouth through this hair-like structure present on their body, and this is called as cilia. The cilia will help to push the food to the mouth, and then the food is taken in from the mouth. This also has nucleus and the cytoplasm. So the only difference between nutrition in amoeba and paramecium is that in amoeba the food can be taken from any part of the body because its cytoplasm or its body is very flexible. It can come into any shape. So the cytoplasm will just go and surround the food and take in. But here they'll be using this cilia, which is not only useful for their movement but also to bring this food particle to the mouth and then trap it and then obtain the nutrients from it. Now let us study the nutrition in multicellular organisms. If we look into the nutrition in multicellular organisms like human beings, it is not as simple as that of amoeba, paramecium, or any other single cell organism. It is a bit more complex than any other single cell organism. Right from taking in food from the mouth to the removal of food through the anus, there are various processes happening and there are various definite organs in the body to perform different activities. So now let us discuss the nutrition in human beings in detail. The food is taken up from the mouth. So the site of entry of food or ingestion of food is mouth. After mouth, the food passes to the esophagus, or which is also called as a food pipe. From the esophagus, the food moves on to the stomach and then it reaches the intestine. First it reaches the small intestine and then the food goes to the large intestine. And finally, the waste are removed through the anus. So the food enters through mouth, it goes to esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and finally anus. And this forms a passage or the canal for the food to pass. And this passage or canal through which the food passes is called as the alimentary canal in human beings. This alimentary canal will also be receiving certain secretions from certain glands in our body, and the glands here will be liver and pancreas. So food will not be passing through liver and pancreas, but liver and pancreas will be adding on their secretions to the food which is present in the alimentary canal or which passes through the alimentary canal. So alimentary canal along with the glands that are liver and pancreas. This is the liver and this one is the pancreas. So alimentary canal along with the glands that are liver and pancreas is referred to as the digestive system. So if they ask us to label the parts of alimentary canal, we should not write liver and pancreas. We should just start from mouth and end at anus without including liver and pancreas. But if they ask us to label or write down the parts of the digestive system, we have to write the parts of the alimentary canal along with the glands which are associated with it. Now let us discuss one by one all the parts of the digestive system. The first part is mouth. Mouth is the site of both intake of food, that is ingestion, because through mouth only we take in the food, and also the part where the process of digestion begins. Digestion is the process of breaking complex substances into the simpler forms which can be then taken up by the body. So mouth acts as a site of both taking in food as well as the site where the process of digestion starts. So let us see how digestion starts here. For that, we should first know what are the parts there in the mouth. They have teeth, tongue, and saliva. The teeth is responsible for breaking down the bigger molecules of food into smaller ones. So big chunks of food will be broken down into smaller pieces by the teeth. So the food which is broken down by the teeth into smaller pieces will be having starch present in them. Starch is a complex substance and cannot be absorbed by the body. So this complex substance has to be broken down into a simpler form, that is sugar. Sugar is a simple substance. So the conversion of starch will be done by an enzyme which is present in saliva called as a salivary amylase. So the salivary amylase which is present in saliva will act upon the starch which is present in food and will convert it into sugar. So we can see there is conversion of complex substance into simpler ones. So that is why we say the process of digestion begins at the mouth itself. Then what is the function of tongue? Tongue is responsible for mixing the food with the saliva. So in mouth what happens is teeth breaks the bigger pieces of food into smaller pieces, and then the salivary amylase which is present in the saliva will convert the starch which is present in the food into sugar, and the tongue will mix the saliva with the pieces of food present in our mouth. Moving on to the next part of the digestive system, that is esophagus. This entire long pipe through which the food passes is called as the food pipe or esophagus. So esophagus is also called as a food pipe through which the food passes from the mouth to the stomach. The esophagus is a muscular organ and they show a certain type of movement in them. The movement is like it contracts, then relaxes, then contracts, then relaxes. So this rhythmic contraction and relaxation is given a name, and that is known as peristaltic movements, or they are also called as peristalsis. This peristaltic movement is continued throughout the alimentary canal. Through this peristaltic movement only the food passes through the alimentary canal. So the rhythmic contraction and relaxation which happens in the esophagus or the entire alimentary canal is called as peristaltic movement, or also can be called as peristalsis. So that is all about esophagus. And esophagus transfers the food from the mouth to the stomach. Moving on to the third organ, that is stomach. In stomach, there are three major secretions starting from pepsin, NaCl, and finally the mucus layer. The pepsin helps to break down the proteins that are present in food. So it helps in the digestion of proteins. But for pepsin to function, the condition inside the stomach should be acidic, and this condition is made acidic inside the stomach using the hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid makes the condition inside the stomach acidic, which facilitates the functioning of the pepsin, which breaks down proteins. Now this acidic condition inside the stomach might also affect the inner linings of the wall of the stomach. So the inner linings of the stomach will be protected by this mucus covering. So mucus is protective in function. This protects the stomach from the harmful effects of the acid, that is HCl. So now in stomach we can see that protein is getting digested, and stomach is a very muscular organ, so it will mix the food very nicely with the acid and the pepsin. So here a part of the digestion is happening, and then from the stomach the food is moved into the small intestine. So the next organ will be small intestine. From the stomach to the small intestine, the food is passed through a sphincter muscle. This sphincter muscle will regulate the food slowly into the small intestine, because the food should not be pushed at once. Now the small intestine through the sphincter muscle now receives the food from the stomach. What happens in small intestine? This is a very important part. Small intestine first receives the food, and then it also receives the secretions from the two glands that are liver and pancreas. Liver secretes the bile juice which is stored in this gallbladder. So this is liver, this is the gallbladder, and this one is the pancreas. Now liver will be secreting the bile juice, and pancreas will be secreting the pancreatic juices, and this all will reach the small intestine. The function of bile juice is that it converts the acidic medium of the food into alkaline or basic medium. We know that the food which is coming from stomach is acidic, and now it has to be converted into basic condition. So this bile juice will be converting this acidic food into basic, and it will also act on the fats. The bigger molecules of fats or this fat molecules will be broken into smaller globules of fat so that it gets more surface area for the enzymes to act upon it. And this process of breaking down these huge fat molecules into smaller fat globules is called as emulsification. And this emulsification of fats is done by the bile juice. Next, coming to pancreas. Pancreas secrete the pancreatic juices, which contains two major enzymes. They are trypsin and lipase. Trypsin is responsible for digesting the proteins or breaking proteins into simpler forms, whereas the lipase will now act on this emulsified fats. So the bile juice breaks down this complex fat molecules into the simple emulsified fats or smaller globules of fats, and then this enzyme lipase will be acting on this emulsified fats. So now we have seen the secretions from the two glands, what it does. And finally, there will also be some secretions from the walls of the small intestines. And these secretions are called as intestinal secretions or intestinal juices. And finally, this intestinal juices or secretions will do the final conversion. And we have to remember these three major conversions clearly. It will convert proteins into amino acids, carbohydrates into glucose, and finally the fats into fatty acids and glycerol. So these three reactions or conversions we should remember clearly. Proteins, carbohydrates and fats which have come from the food are complex substances, and through various enzymes now it has been converted into simpler forms which can be taken up by the body, like amino acids, glucose, fatty acids and glycerol. So small intestine is the site of complete digestion. Now the food which is available in the simple form in the intestine will be taken up by small finger-like projections inside the intestinal walls, and these small finger-like projections inside the walls are called as villi. This villi will be responsible for taking the nutrients to the intestine. Villi not only gives us a site for absorption, but also it increases the surface area for absorption because it is having more foldings in them. So they give a site of absorption as well as increase the surface area for absorption. And finally, through the villi, which is richly supplied with the blood vessels, the nutrients will be taken in and will be passed on to the blood. Now this blood will carry the nutrients to various other parts of the body. Now coming to large intestine. In large intestines also, this finger-like projection that is called as villi will be present, and here the function of villi will be absorption of water from the leftover food. Since our body cannot afford to lose water, the water from the leftover food will be obtained or will be taken up by the villi which are present in the large intestine. And finally, after the absorption of water, the waste will be removed through the anus and this process of removal of waste is called as digestion. So we have seen right from taking in the food from the mouth, that is ingestion, then we came to the various parts of the alimentary canal, and finally the waste product was removed from the anus. So let us once recall what we have seen in this video. We started with heterotrophic mode of nutrition, the mode of nutrition in which organism cannot prepare their own food. In heterotrophic mode of nutrition, we saw its three types, starting from saprophytic mode of nutrition in which the organisms depend on dead and decaying organism for obtaining their nutrients. Then we saw parasitic mode of nutrition in which the organism depend upon other living organisms. And finally the holozoic mode of nutrition in which the organism take in some complex food which is then converted into simpler form using certain enzymes and then taken up by the body. In holozoic mode of nutrition, we discussed how it happens in single-celled organism, and then in single cell we discussed about two organisms. They are amoeba, in which the food can be taken in from any part of the body because it is not having any definite shape. And we also discussed the nutrition in paramecium. Paramecium has a fixed shape and it also has a proper site through which the food enters. Then after single cell organism, we also discussed the nutrition in multi-celled organism, in which we saw the nutrition in human beings. In nutrition in human beings, we saw right from mouth, the part through which the food enters, then the food goes into the esophagus or the food pipe, then the food enters into the stomach where the pepsin acts on proteins, and then the food is made into acidic form. Then it goes into the small intestine, and here in small intestine it receives the secretions from liver as well as pancreas, and small intestine is the site of complete digestion of food. Then the food will go into the large intestine. In large intestine, what happens is the water is absorbed through the villi, and finally the waste is removed through the anus. So this is all that we have discussed in this video in heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Now let us discuss a question. This question was asked in 2020 for 3 marks. The question was split up into 2 parts. The first part of the question asks to state the role played by the following in the process of digestion: enzyme trypsin and enzyme lipase. We know that both these enzymes, trypsin and lipase, are present in the pancreatic juices, which are secreted by pancreas and then added onto the small intestine. So we'll write the answer. Trypsin is responsible for digestion of proteins. The second enzyme, lipase, is responsible for digestion of emulsified fats. The second part of the question asks to list 2 functions of finger-like projections present in the small intestine. They mentioned the words finger-like projection instead of telling villi here. We know the finger-like projections which are present in the small intestine are called as villi. So we will write the 2 major functions of villi, or 2 functions of villi. First one is absorption of nutrients, and the second one is it increases the surface area for absorption, so that more absorption can take place and this absorption is faster. So with this we come to the end of this video. In the next video we will discuss about the second life process, that is respiration. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share it with your friends and subscribe to our YouTube channel.